Deputy Speaker. The government has gone back to the three-word slogans. We're hearing about Operation Budget Repair. Now, I know that the three-word slogans work to treat in opposition, but they're no way to run a government. But if it's going to be three-word slogans, how about Operation Cut Unemployment? We now have unemployment at 6.4% nationally, the highest level in 12 years, with 789,000 Australians out of work. In my home state of Victoria, unemployment has now reached the quite unacceptable level of 7%. Youth unemployment in Victoria is at an even more disturbing 15%. The Liberal government is undermining young Australians looking for work with its savage cut of $1.2 billion to income support for people under 30. From the 1st of January next year, job seekers under 30 who need New Start and youth allowance will be forced to wait 6 months before receiving any support. As a delegation from the Australian Council for Social Service who visited me this week pointed out, what will they live on if they can't find a job? And requiring job seekers to apply for 40 jobs each month is ludicrous. The jobs simply aren't there. It is simply a recipe for red tape for business. This budget risks condemning a generation of young Australians to a vicious cycle of poverty. And if it's going to be all about slogans, how about Operation Keep Your Word? They promised to take the pressure off the cost of living, but then they cut childcare and increased the cost of pharmaceuticals. They promised no new or increased taxes and then gave us a new GP tax and raised the tax on petrol. They promised no cuts to health and then cut $50 billion from hospitals. They promised no cuts to education, then cut $30 billion from schools, $1 billion from skills and $5 billion from universities. They promised no increase to university fees, but fees are set to double and triple. They promised to create 1 million new jobs, but unemployment is on the rise and youth unemployment, as I said, is at 15-year highs. The Prime Minister promised to be the Prime Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, then cut $500 million from essential health and services. They promised no change to pensions, then cut pensions by $23 billion over the next 10 years, $80 a week from the pockets and purses of pensioners. Deputy Speaker, on this day last year at Rooty Hill, the then opposition leader, now Prime Minister, promised Australians no cuts to health, no cuts to education, no cuts or changes to pensions. What a difference a year makes. And Education Minister Pyne said in a media release of 26th of August last year, just over a year ago, he said, "While we welcome debate over the quality and standards in our universities, we have no plans to increase fees." And what's he saying a year later? Well, last weekend he said student protesters should get some perspective because the government is not exactly asking for their left kidney. Well, I checked this out, and it turns out to be actually even worse than that. I looked up the Transplant Australia website. It says the cost of a kidney transplant from a live donor is $75,000 and the cost of a kidney transplant from a deceased donor is $65,000. So $75,000 to get a kidney from a live donor, $65,000 from a deceased one. So getting a new left kidney would be less costly than the debts many graduates are going to pay if this government's budget passes. Under this budget, university fees are set to double and triple. The government wants to cut funding for our undergraduate places by up to 37%, deregulate fee levels and allow universities to charge what they like, and outrageously introduce a compounding real interest rate of 6% for all student debts. We'll see science degrees increase from the current average $44,000 up to $170,000 over 20 years, nursing degrees rise from $23,000 to $62,000 and teaching degrees rise from $32,000 up to $87,000. Deputy Speaker, this is not a government of adults. This is a government of intergenerational warriors, taking the under-25s off New Start and fitting students up with 60% of the cost of their education. It is a shameful way to treat our young people, and the government should be condemned for this unfair, short-sighted, incoherent dog's breakfast of a budget.
Order. I call the honourable member for Robertson.